Welcome to Manna at the Tap, a podcast of Tapestry Ministries. Each episode reflects on a daily Bible reading from the Revised Common Lectionary. I'm Laura, a fellow traveler on a spiritual journey with the Tapestry community. We call the daily Bible reading our spiritual manna, which nourishes our souls, fostering spiritual growth as we share insights and interpretations that enrich our spiritual lives. The lectionary reading for today, which is Monday, April 28th, 2025, is from the book of Esther, chapter 7, verses 1 to 10. The story of Esther takes place in the Babylonian city of Susa. The Jewish people had been exiled from their homeland after the king of Babylon conquered Israel and destroyed the temple and the economic structure. Esther's uncle Mordecai was a third generation Babylonian, born and raised. He was not interested in moving back to Israel, a country he had only heard about from his grandparents. He had a secure job in the royal court, and since Esther's parents were both dead, he adopted her as his own child. The king in power is no longer Babylonian. The Persians under King Artaxerxes have succeeded them. The propaganda says his kingdom stretched over 27 provinces from India to Ethiopia, and to celebrate his new reign, the new king calls for quite an exaggerated feast with all of his officials, which lasted over half a year. Can you imagine? His wife, Queen Vashti, is also having a party for the women, but her name is barely mentioned until the king wants to have a party for his officials for yet another week. This time he wants to show off his property that no other man can have. He sends and calls for Queen Vashti to appear before him and all the other men with nothing but her crown. Vashti refuses to come at his command, and of course the king becomes infuriated and he reacts. He assembles 7 princes of Persia and asks what he should do. They decide to banish the queen because of her refusal, because her disobedience to the king's commands not only wronged the king, but all the princes and all the people of the kingdom. So, after several months without a queen, the king's advisor suggests that he have a beauty pageant to find the next queen, which he thought was a great idea. Under her uncle's suggestion, Esther was brought to the king's harem as a possible candidate to replace Queen Vashti. Like the other women in the harem, Esther was powerless, but she was not left without choice. They were destined to live in the king's harem for the rest of their lives. They could turn on each other in competition or turn to each other for support. As a community of women, they had the power to make decisions that benefited their community and the wider world. The choices Esther had to make were a matter of life and death for herself and the other Jewish people living in Persia. You see, the Jews had an enemy, Haman, a descendant of their old enemies, the Amalekites, from the days of King Saul. Haman's anger was ignited towards the Jewish people when Mordecai refused to bow down and give him the honor he thought he deserved. So, Haman put an evil plan into place. He would gather his cohorts, cast lots, and on the day that lots chose, all the Jewish people would be the target of a planned execution. The king's decree. Everyone in the land had permission to kill the Jewish people and take possession of their property. 1 year from the day they cast lots, all the Jewish people in Persia were destined to die, including Esther and Mordecai. After seeing her uncle Mordecai at the city gate in sackcloth and ashes, she sent for a word about why he was mourning. Esther, by messenger, learned of Haman's evil plan. Mordecai pleaded with Esther to talk to the king to reverse the plan and save her people. Will Esther move from fear to faith? Thankfully, Esther is not alone in the decision-making process. She has the other women, the favor and advice from the eunuchs, the other people in the court, and her uncle Mordecai. The first thing Esther asked the people to do is fast and pray with her and her maids for 3 days. Although the name of God is not used in the book of Esther, we see faith in action. They seek wisdom and favor from God before they put their plan into motion. The first hurdle Esther had to overcome was approaching the king in his chambers. The law of the land was that no one would approach the king without his permission, and the punishment was death, unless he held out his golden scepter. Esther resolved to take the chance. If I die, I die, she declared. She was willing to lay down her own life to save the lives of her people. Thankfully, once the king saw the beautiful and impressive Esther, dressed in her finest, he held out his golden scepter. Oh. Esther left such an impression on the king that he offered her half his kingdom. But Esther and her community had a plan. She invited the king and Haman to a banquet that very evening. After having their fill of food and wine, the king once again offered Esther half his kingdom. But Esther only requested that they return the next day for another banquet. After the first banquet, the king was pleased. Haman was self-inflated with pride, but Haman's joy is short-lived after he is forced to parade Mordecai through the streets in the king's robe and crown. And you'll have to read that part of the story because it's great. Now, we're finally to our lectionary reading for today, Esther chapter 7. It is the next day, and Esther's second banquet with the king and Haman. The king is still blissfully unaware, and Haman is a bit rattled by the Mordecai parade honor, but still quite happy to be at a banquet with the king and queen. The king asks again, "What is your request, Queen Esther?" And once again, he offers her half his kingdom. This is Esther's chance to plead for her people's lives. She is wise in how she approaches the question. She appeals to the king's emotions and his favor for her. If you favor me, my king, and if it pleases you, spare my life. That's all I'm asking for, that my people and I be spared. She hasn't yet revealed who the people are or who she is. The king is angered that someone would target his queen, and Esther reveals that the culprit is Haman. Haman did not see this coming, and his joy turns to terror when it dawns on him what is unfolding. The king leaves the room to ponder what has transpired. The king returns, and can you imagine this now, and catches Haman on the queen's couch. The king is infuriated. and Haman is sentenced to death and impaled on the pole that he made to kill Mordecai on. So come back tomorrow, April 29th, to hear what happens next. Thank you.